conversations around the table discussing these things. But if we're going to engage publicly in these matters that are so personally felt, then we have to answer one question. What kind of culture are we going to be in America? What do we mean by that? It will take me a few moments to unpack this. Paul Tillich, the theologian, said basically in the relationship to morality and ethics, there are three kinds of cultures that he summarized. One was called theonomous, second heteronymous, third autonomous. What did he mean by that? A theonomous culture, theos, word for God, nomos, the word for law, God's law. Theonomous cultures assume that God, however you define him as a supreme entity, has so poured the moral ethos into the human heart that it's a natural way for everybody to think in those terms. It just takes natural law and puts it into a transcendent moral category. And if there is a culture like that in this world, it would have to be India. Hinduism is based itself on a theonomous motif, that value for the family, the value for one another, the protection of the animal kingdom, and all of this in vegetarianism. All of this comes about from what they would call a theonomous assumption. God's law is in my heart. I don't have to have it imposed upon me. It comes from within me, and I know it ultimately comes from him. So that's a theonomous culture. The second one is a heteronymous culture. A heteronymous culture is heteros meaning another, nomos meaning law. That there is another authority that brings its law to bear upon you. In secular terms, Marxism is a heteronymous culture. In religious terms, Islam is a heteronymous culture. With a handful of the few, the mullahs or the leaders or the imams or the ayatollahs, they will dictate the ethic for the masses. It is a heteronomy in action. And in Marxist ideology, they bring to you their values, their world system, over and above and against the individual. Theonomous, God's law in your heart, and it's all in sync. Heteronymous, a law enforced to you from above. Now, in America, they will not yield to either of the two. The scout culture will not say, no, it's God's law in our heart. We don't want to go that route. Nor do they want a heteronymous culture where we are dictated to in what we want to do. We want an autonomous culture. Autos meaning self, nomos meaning law. We want to be a law unto ourselves. Now, if that's who we are, is the person who disagrees with me willing to give me my autonomy too? Or is the question given, and once you answer it, it's bait and switch, and all of a sudden my autonomy is taken away and a heteronymous attitude takes over. I am forced to comply with the other person's worldview. After just telling me that we're autonomous, now all of a sudden the behavior becomes heteronymous. So until that question is answered, I don't know how we're ever going to get our way out of this maze. Are we an autonomous culture? If so, dissenting views ought to be allowed with impunity. Why is it that if a Christian holds to the sacredness of sexuality, that he or she is seen as imposing that view? That is a view that we hold within ourselves. As I said to an ABC reporter who looked at me and stayed through the whole talk at Indiana University, at the end of it she said, how is it you are against, Christians are against racism, but all of a sudden they are prejudiced against this kind of sexual behavior and all? I said, you know, I find that interesting. I said, can you answer my question to me? We are against racial prejudice because race is something sacred. You do not violate a person's race. My ethnicity is sacred. I do not want it violated. I said, for the same reason we make our decisions about life, the sexuality is sacred. I said, you now have to tell me how you treat race as sacred and desacralize sexuality. You'll help me with that. We can go further in our conversation. And as we were walking, as the woman walking back, she looked at me and she said, you know, Ravi, I've never thought of it in those terms. So we have to have the first question answered, what kind of a culture do we want? Can we disagree and still allow the other person's view to be held with impunity? I believe my view on the sacredness of marriage and sexuality ought to be given that privilege. Secondly, most importantly, is this question. How can we answer the question on what marriage is, what sexuality is, why we honor our vows, and so on? How can we ever answer that if we've not not answered one basic question. What does it mean to be human? I did a forum at Johns Hopkins on this subject. Francis Collins and I were the only Christian voices, the others were all different voices. I really believe this question that is facing us is a very serious one, because it's going to overturn 5,000 years of belief on what marriage is. Very serious one. G.K. Chesterton said, whenever you pull up a fence, always pause long enough to ask why it was put there in the first place. So we have to know what we're dealing with. And I don't know if we can ever answer that question. And we answer these two. What kind of culture do we want? Number two, what does it mean? Once that question is answered to me from both sides of it, then I can tell you why our answer from the Christian worldview is what it is. Does this mean I stop loving the person who disagrees with me? No. Does it mean I don't want that person for a neighbor? No. I just want that person to return the compliment and allow me